Welcome, DC Beer Show, everybody. We're at DC Beer across social media. Mike Stein, what is in your Stein on this balmy evening?
I don't have a Stein. I'm drinking straight out the bottle. Thanks to you, Jake. I'm drinking Two Women from New Glarus Brewing Company out of Wisconsin. Only in Wisconsin. It's a wonderful beer. I wish there were more women in beer. Speaking of women in beer, Brandy, thank you for bringing more women to beer, specifically DC beer. What's in your glass, your Cambro, your tumbler, your water bottle tonight?
Mr. Stein, that was probably the most beautiful segue I've ever heard in my life. Cheers to that. And I'm not cheersing you from a glass or a stein. I'm also cheersing you from a can. I am drinking Dynasty's Rolls of Civility, number 99. From a can. It's the Wales Pale Ale. I got home and I was like, man, I got stung by a wasp and I'm feeling pretty thirsty. It's steamy outside. Is it going to rain? I don't know. Let me open this beautiful can. And I enjoyed every last drop of it from this lovely blue and white can. Jake, what you got going on over there?
I have here, and it's a mouthful, a lager from Ocelot. That's a collaboration with Detroit post-punk band Proto Martyr. The name of their new album and the name of the beer are both Formal Growth in the Desert. And you should make way for this beer because the album kind of slaps in that like 81 post-punk sort of way. And the beer is really nicely drinking too. I would say it's kind of similar to an export lager. Jack and Richard, the lager brewers over at Ocelot, really nicely done. We also have with us our producer, Papa Beer,
Papa
Richard.
Bear!
Richard,
Yeah.
what are you
Hey,
imbibing
everybody.
or ingesting tonight?
I'm canning it as well. I'm canning it with Nanticoke Nectar, which I'm drinking because, as some of you know, and some of the listeners may know, I will soon be departing the Mid-Atlantic region for Eastern Tennessee.
Oh.
And so I've been sort of going through some of my local favorites lately, drinking a little more Silver Branch to get all of those beers in, drinking the Nanticoke Nectar, um, really hitting Denizens hard. These are all my sort of neighborhoody kind of beers. So yeah, that's what I'm drinking tonight, and I have really been digging it. I'm like getting way back into IPAs. The higher ABV still caught me by surprise a little bit. I'm feeling my old age because I'll have a couple of 7 or 8% without thinking about it. The next morning, just be like, what's going on?
Oh
Why do I feel
man. I
like
mean,
this?
after packing all day, you're probably exhausted and you're like, "Oh, let me just pop a beer." Wait, I'm dehydrated. We're very, very, very sad that you are leaving Papa Beer. Very, very sad. I will cry about it, but not right now. I I am having that Dynasty beer, and I know that Jake could have had a cool conversation with Favio of Dynasty, and I bet we're gonna listen to that a little bit later. But first, I wanna know about some of the cool events going on. I personally will be at the Peachy Keen beer release, which is a Red Bear and Urban Garden collaboration. It's going on from 3 to 6 p.m. at Red Bear. But not only will there be great beer, but also an art swap from Swap DC. And I love Swap DC. I went the first one that I ran into. Richard was also there, and we were at Right Proper in Brookland. And we actually bought art that night from two different artists. Swap DC is amazing, and they always seem to collaborate with Imani at her beer releases. So we're gonna be at Red Bear this Sunday, from 36 Red Bear. I will be there. I'm excited. Are you guys gonna go?
I will be in Delaware drinking probably either Dogfish, something weird and obnoxious that shouldn't be good, but will be good. It could be a blend of Berliner Weiss, Kolsch, and something else that is turned into Sequench, this worldwide phenomenon. Or it could be a beer brewed with chocolate malt and lobsters that sounds absolutely disgusting and then ends up winning a GABF, Great American Beer Festival, gold medal in the like weird esoteric specialty beer. And yeah, so Dogfish continually proves me wrong. And if all else fails, I'll be in walking distance from Dewey Beer Co. for the next couple of weeks, which means I will have a hazy and then copious amounts of their Mexican style lager, El Trono, because it's like walking through a Delaware cornfield, just like clean, crisp lager yeast, a whole bunch of flake corn. It's 4.5%. Great beach beer.
I will likely be in Pennsylvania on Sunday, Brandy, but I wish I was going to the Art Brew Swap. I'm really hoping Peachy Keen makes it past Sunday, July 30th into August. I have a good feeling it will because Red Bear is a good sized brew house. And, you know, there's a bunch happening on Sunday. There's the brewery open house at Denizens in Riverdale Park. There's also the Jerry Garcia birthday celebration at DC Brau on Sunday. So not only am I missing Imani and the Red Bear team, I'm going to be missing Julie and Jeff at Denizens. I'm going to be missing Paulette and Brandon at Brau. And I know they're huge deadheads. They love paying tribute to Jerry Garcia. I'm so bummed to be missing out on Sunday, but I'll be sure to check out Peachy Keen when I get back in town, as well as frequenting DC Brau draft accounts and Denizens on draft all around DC, as well as the various, Montgomery, Prince George's, and other counties I've been known to tipple a draft beer in Maryland.
What is it with breweries and the Grateful Dead and jam bands? How come no one does like a Steely Dan thing at a brewery?
Dude,
I'm just
Let's
saying.
do it.
Yeah.
1000%. Tell me about it. If there was a Steely Dan night, a cover band or
Let's get
whatever,
all
tribute
jazzy
night,
and
I
studio
would be
weird
there
and
with
whatever.
bells and whistles. I would literally wear bells and whistles if that were a thing. Oh my god, I was so excited.
You
Can
hear that,
someone
area
appreciate
breweries?
Steely Dan?
There's untapped market
Ugh.
here. Steely Dan night.
I'll come and
Make it
sing all
happen.
the lyrics.
Well, Richard was just telling us
Babylon
he's been.
sisters, shake
Oh,
it.
I'm reading a book. It's a true story. I'm actually reading a brand new book about Steely Dan. It's the history of Steely Dan, but it is told through the characters in their songs, like Charlie Freak, like
Jesus.
Babs and Clean Willie, and like like Babylon Sis, like all of the characters in their songs. It's amazing.
Okay, I need to read
And
that.
I'm reading this
Awesome.
every
I'm so
morning,
excited.
so I'm in the total Steely Dan. Like Steely Dan, this is not a Steely Dan podcast, but I'm going to go off for a minute. Steely Dan is the first band I ever remember like really like being like, oh, this is good. This is good in a way that is different than Donny Osmond,
Oh,
and the
yeah.
other like kid music I'm listening to.
I listened to the entire album of Gaucho on the drive home from work today, and it was I mean, it opens with Babylon Sisters. I mean, such a great man. Sorry,
Breweries.
not a
You're
Steely
looking
Dan
for- if
podcast.
you're looking for a thing to do, I
Well-
recommend a Steely Dan day.
Let me tie it back to beer history here for a moment.
Thanks,
It was
Max.
If I could.
it was July 2012, so literally 11 years ago this month, when I wrote about DC Brau and Brian Barrow's brewing your favorite foreign movie, which coincidentally, your favorite foreign movie, table beer, Belgian small pale, Belgian small beer,
A Potterspeer.
a Pottersbeer, if you will, won at the Great American Beer Festival. So it is with that, I leave you this DC beer bit of history. DC Brau, your favorite foreign movie, was actually a Great American Beer Festival winner. And so we're back on track here with the DC beer
Nice.
theme.
On Thursday, August the 3rd, I'm going to be grabbing for an IPA because did you know that that is National IPA Day? How and where and what? What will you be doing and drinking and celebrating National IPA Day, my friends, my beer friends?
Brandy, we don't need a National IPA Day. If you are a craft beer fan, every day is National IPA Day. And so I'm going to be the obnoxious contrarian. I'll definitely be drinking a lager. It'll also probably be smoked. Um,
Ooh,
there should be
hot.
a
You
yeah,
got me a smoked.
yeah, like, IPA doesn't need a day. It's like having White History Month, right? We need it's just
Oh, oh,
what's the
oh.
point, right? Like, there are historically underappreciated things out there. You don't need IPA day. Like, it's like a fish
So
in if you like craft beer, you're a fish in water.
I
How
feel
about
like this is gonna
you
segue
know,
into a
right.
story,
We need like
Jake.
Shark Week, Smoke Beer Month, whatever. Mike, you were saying.
so technically
Only only a thin man would want,
it's
sorry.
technically
Ooh.
Rauk Beer Month. Um and technically June was also Rauk Beer Month, and technically August is Rauk Beer Month. If you go by the wonderful calendar set forth by the Dovetail Brewery out of Chicago, they have a wonderful calendar. And sure enough, 12 months out of the year are Rauk Beer Month. Yes, Jake, to your point, IPA has no problem selling. And IPA Day came about, I want to say like a decade ago, when IPAs, weren't the leader for the last decade because it was 10 years ago. And yeah, to your point, it's kind of redundant now. It's like selling water to fishes. So yeah, have some smoke beer. Join us, if you will. I'll say this, Brandy, you are drinking Wales. Wales Pale Ale was a beer originally brewed by Andrew Wales, who was a Scottish immigrant, and he sold his beer to George Washington. George Washington obviously didn't want, what is today the US to be colonies. He wanted it to be, a sovereign nation. Andrew Wales, his brewer who sold him beer, was like, no, 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 I'm a loyalist. I'm a Tory, AKA, I want the Virginia colony to be under the English crown, the British monarchy. So even in the 1700s, you have the president and the brewer butting heads. And I still think that holds up really well today. Even if you butt heads with somebody, there's still commerce, there's still trade. We live, thankfully, in a beautiful city in DC where we get to disagree with people, hopefully over a beer. And at the end of the day, we can all be safe and maybe agree to disagree, right? You say IPA day, I say Rauch Beer Day. Let's have a beer.
But IPA has its history. So, as a historian, it's okay to celebrate IPA Day for one day. I mean, a lot of us do drink IPAs, but if you're a beer nerd, yeah, there are probably some styles you don't love, but there are you love more than you don't, most likely. And I think it's because you can appreciate them. And thanks to Mike Stein, we can appreciate them not only for their taste, but for their history, which is fantastic. So, I bow down to you, Mr. Stein, the knower of all beer things. But I wanna know, have you guys heard of, the
Mm.
Mieza Blendery in Alexandria?
Favio and I just talked about it. Just a
Did
skosh,
you?
a wee little bit.
Oh my god. I mean, I met the owner actually, Richard and I were at Astrolab right before they shut their doors, RIP, and I haven't made it out there yet, but, my friend Frank went, he said it was great, but just curious. I'm interested in the concept. I'm not overly familiar with like building a whole like brewery around it, but I'm curious to go. So I can't wait to listen to this interview.
Yeah, we'll be talking a little bit of sour beer, and I think, Brandy, you and I are gonna be hanging out with Alex Lynch over at Mieza at some point in the pretty near future.
Dope. I'm there.
Speaking of beer history, our guest, Director of Brewing Operations, founder of Dynasty Brewing, Favio Garcia, has been brewing in Virginia for almost 30 years now professionally.
He doesn't
Longer
look
than
that
that.
old.
No, he doesn't. His
Beer keeps him young.
Keeps him.
moisturizing, yeah, his skincare routine, hanging out with steamy tanks. It's like a neti pot for 12 hours a day. Dynasty's fifth anniversary is upon us, and so Fabio was nice enough to sit down and join us on this here DC Beer Show. Fabio, what do you have planned for the fifth anniversary?
Hey, Jake, how's it going? Fifth anniversary, yeah, 5 years at our little brewery in Ashburn. Well, we have a party planned on the 26th of August, Saturday. starting at noon. Some people coming over. We got lots of music. Really focusing on heavy on the music this year. We got 4 different bands starting at 3. So 3, 4:30, 5, and then 8 o'clock. We have the black minivan finishing out the night. So it should be pretty good. And of course, we have an anniversary beer, Quintessential IPA, our 5th anniversary beers that are one of our hazy IPAs. We can't get away from those. We love them. So we'll make another one.
Are you doing a 5 theme, like 5 different hops, 5 different, grains in the bill?
No,
Any
kept it pretty
anything al
simple. Kept pretty
Yeah.
simple. No theme except for we like to use Nelson and Citra. That's pretty much the big thing about it. Kind of kept it a little bit for us. Usually our anniversary beers, at least last year, was pretty big, over 8. So we kind of more like a 7% beer, 7.5%. We'll see how it turns out. We just kind of brewed it last week. It's still fermenting. We do multiple dry hops, so that was the first dry hop is today.
So, speaking of big beers,
Yep,
last year at Snally, I
yep,
saw you and you had a cask of Tiny Dictator, or at least let's say you had a firkin,
that's correct. Yeah,
gravity pours of Tiny Dictator, which is an imperial stout. I think it was 12%, but it
yeah,
might have been a little bit
a
more.
little bit more. Yeah,
Yeah,
uh,
you may have poured me like 6 ounces of it and sent me on my way,
yeah.
which thank you, and I hate you. Uh, what do you have planned for Snallygaster this year, if it's not too early?
No, no. I definitely like the idea of something light and something dark. So we did a Pilsner last year, our Supremo Pilsner, and then we had the Imperial Stout. That was a pretty heavy duty stout because the barrel aged with blueberries and chocolate. So it was all kinds of things going on. Well, maybe a little too much sometimes, but especially for a festival of Snallygaster, there's like lots of flavors going on. But we have fun pouring it. We are planning to do a collaboration with Ocelot in the early fall, and I'm hoping that it's a dark lager. We've done it in the past, and it'll be returned to that. But it was it was a Mike Stein inspired collaboration. Um, he's actually I was looking through the list of collaborations. He inspired quite a few of them. But so it's a historic dark beer, dark lager, Kulmbacher. So he convinced Jack brewer for Ocelot to brew this beer. So we plan to do it again, and then hopefully we can pour it at Snallygaster.
Cool. That means we might be seeing Love Vigilantes again.
Yes.
So you've collaborated with Mike and Mount Vernon. So Mike, Pete Jones, Lost Lagers on a couple of beers, and I now see them in cans in addition to bottles. What's that been like? Just like, are you at Mount Vernon on a semi-regular basis now, talking with them?
Yeah, so it's the it was great development. We had the beers in cans. So last year it was all bottles, and just from a brewery logistics standpoint, it was very slow and nightmarish to bottle those beers. These are historical beers essentially. So some are more historical than others. Some are just ideas of beers that are historical in the sense of so we did like a Wales Pale Ale, so it's named after Andrew Wales, a brewer that had a Scottish brewer that had a place in Alexandria. That there's some records of George Washington buying beer from him. So we did a basically an English style pale ale. So we were able to put that in cans, and the pull through has been dramatic, has been great. So they're selling at the Mount Vernon Inn and at the gift shop. With cans, the sales increased dramatically. So that's been a lot of fun to be able to produce those. So we do meet with Susan at Mount Vernon a couple times a year. Kind of at the end of the last season to see how they liked everything and want to progress and say absolutely. So we worked out what beers we're going to brew again and maybe add some new ones. So we keep uh, we keep adding beers and adding ideas to it. Mike and Pete from Lost Loggers are working on a recipe that we plan to do a double mash. It's basically a barley wine. We're going to call it an export ale, but it's a big, heavy duty uh, English style.
I have 2 follow-up questions about that. The first is that, are you gonna make a small beer
Mm,
following the barley wine, that has used that grain to do something
that's
much
a good
lower
idea. We didn't actually talk
in
about that, but
ABV.
that's a good idea. I mean, I only done a small beer in the past, I think only once. No, that's not true. I've been brewing so long, I forget. But I have two memories of making a small beer. And the problem with small beer is they can be pretty astringent, right? Because you kind of get all the sugars out of it. They can be pretty thin, right?
Yeah.
Um, but one of the things of having a local yeast lab with Jasper and Travis, work with them all the time. I think we can find something that could blend well, right? In the old days, you kind of just had one house strain, and you just use your house ale strain for everything. Now we're using basically a new strain almost every week.
Yeah, and you've got a lot at your disposal, like, honey, Belgian candy sugar, attenuate it under 80% or so, and,
Yeah, no, it's a good idea.
yeah,
We're trying to work out when we're going to brew this because I think it's going to be a nightmarish day. I mean, nightmarish, and it'd be fun to hang out with Mike and Pete, but it was going to be a long day. The double mash.
yeah. So the historical, barley wine question, the second is, GW and Mount Vernon came into alcohol at first with whiskey. Is this a candidate to be barrel aged
Oh
in
yeah,
those barrels?
yeah. We had one of our year-round beers for Mount Vernon is the porter. It's basically a London style porter with Virginia ingredients. Is Mount Vernon's Virginia porter, and we already aged that in their rye whiskey casks. So we have some coming out in the next month or so. It's in the barrels, ready to go. So just matter of getting out. So that'll be yes, absolutely. That's going to be something that we can coordinate with Steve, the distiller over there, to get some barrels, and that'll be put that in for sure.
Since you dated yourself back to the Bardo and
Right.
Dominion days,
Yeah.
you tell our listeners a little bit about what it was like operating a brew pub, at a brew pub here in the DC suburbs in Virginia in the 90s?
uh,
I mean, I think that people now know Bardo as the place that was on Bladensburg, and then they were briefly over by Nats Park Brewing outdoors. But
yeah.
there's a tradition there. There's a history.
Yeah. I mean, Bill Stewart that started Bardo. He was kind of ahead of his time, just take an old building, car leadership, and put a brewery in, pretty big brewery, brew house, 20 some barrels. He had, I guess, come back from a trip from the Pacific Northwest when he had a bunch of recipes from breweries that he had visited, and he had people like me brew them. I was a very young brewer. I really went from like 5 gallons home brewing to help 25 barrel system, like basically overnight. It's kind of hard to imagine. It was a very new industry at the time, and there was like small group of people in the industry. It's much smaller than it is now, right? There's 40 breweries in Loudoun County, and probably 40 breweries in the East Coast at that time, if that. So it was a much smaller group of people, and you get to know everybody. You get to know them pretty well. I think that's the biggest change from then and now. It was kind of a free for all, at least Bardo is and was. I mean, I remember it fondly because it was unstructured and a lot of fun. It was frustrating at times, of course. I was there for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, brewed for like a year and a half, 2 years, and found another brewing job and moved on. And of course, Bardo evolved into some other things. He had a farm brewery for a while, way before any farm breweries were even legal. But, like I said, ahead of his times.
Do people now look at you as something of an elder statesman, elder statesperson in the Virginia and the DMV brewing scene? I mean, you've done Bardo,
Yeah.
Dominion when Dominion was in Ashburn, and actually the old Dominion as opposed to now when it's merged with Fordham and is in Delaware.
I don't know. I really don't know what the. I'm always surprised that I'm still in the industry. It's kind of one of those things like, one brewing job leads to the next, and then you get some kind of ownership of one brewery, and then you kind of try to make that work, and that's what I'm still doing, trying to make things work. It's kind of one day at a time in many ways, and I'm still surprised and still brewing. I still enjoy it very much so. Um, every day has a new challenge, and every year is different, but, it keeps evolving for sure.
I
No
was gonna
question.
say, like, you seem like you have adapted and grown and yet still learning, more so than others. I note that you make something like a pastry stout now, this the German chocolate cake beer.
Yep.
You've moved from like the West Coast IPAs of Bill Stewart and the Pacific Northwest,
Hmm.
all those kind of sea hops with Warrior and Glacier in the Whirlpool to hazies, and now of
Yeah.
course with like Fassbender back to West Coast as we're starting to
Yes.
see a little bit more of the West Coast pick up.
Yeah.
But like, what's it been like? Just kind of seeing the transition throughout the years.
Well, that's the thing. That's what I enjoy about it the most is those transitions, right? The evolution of craft beer, and then now it's basically IPA, but the evolution of the IPAs. Um, Even the West Coast are not as West Coast as we used to think of, like Stone. We got those IBU wars. I don't know when that was, but 15 years ago, everything was like
Yeah, I was
super.
thinking maybe like 2010, 2012 was a
Uh,
Green Flash had a beer I think called Palate Wrecker,
right. Yeah,
where
everything gets pushed back, in
yeah.
the process. So even the West Coast are not as bitter as they used to be. But I'm fortunate that my business partner Travis gets to travel to California for work, so he brings back some fresh West Coast beers, and we get to try them. And they tend to be trending more to the bitter, very clear and crisp. And like, oh yeah, we're we're getting back into this. This is good. We're excited to pursue that as far as IPAs this coming year. So anniversaries kind of think of like this is like every year kind of our gonna have a new take on what we're brewing for IPA wise, and then so I think we're gonna have some more clearer, crisper IPAs coming out. Try some different yeast strains. Hazy still sell.
So
Crazy.
you all like you're doing hazies.
Hmm.
You've got at least a couple big stouts. You mentioned Tiny Dictator
Yep.
with the chocolate and blueberries, as well as the German chocolate one. There's a lot of hype around fruited sours, and I note that you seem to have zigged where others have zagged, working with Alex Lynch
Yep.
at Mieza, who at one point was located entirely within Dynasty, but now they have their own tap room. I think it's on South Joyce over in Alexandria.
Right.
What's that process been like where there's wort being made and then trucked from Ashburn, from Loudon, over a little bit closer to DC, put in barrels, blended with fruit, making true actual sours?
Yeah, I think that's I see how much work Alex puts into it. He's picking the fruit, he's going out gathering fruit, picking fruit, or coordinating with growers to pick up some fresh blueberries or raspberries, whatever is in the season. This is his busy time of year, and I stay. Since we're friends and collaborators in many ways, we work together on some things. He uses our brewery, and we get to get some beer from him, some sour beer. So hopefully, I think the plan for having like a sour beer on tap at Dynasty on a regular would be when he's ready for us to have our own blend of Mieza sour at the Dynasty. That's kind of the plan. So yeah, I mean, I personally have not been brewing that many fruited sours. I've stayed away from it, and like I said, Zag is a good way to put it. That having Alex do it. Um, it's a lot of work, and, he's doing it. He's got some spontaneous fermentation, he got mixed cultures. This is not kettle sours, these are a mix of yeast and bacteria in barrels, wine barrels. Um, it's pretty involved.
I do note that he's returned the favor, and if you look at, if you go to the Mieza tap room, you'll note a Pilsner and an IPA,
Mhm.
which I believe at the moment are actually El Supremo, your, Italian style pils,
Yep.
and I think Mosaic Vision, one of the hazies. I think those are the 2 that are on right now. I had asked him if, El Supremo was his shifty, and he just kinda laughed and said, "Yeah, this is what we do." All right, Fabio, lovely talking to you.
Sure.
The anniversary is August 26th, Saturday, and you can buy Dynasty beers in both in DC and Virginia as well. Thanks for being on the show. Much
Sure,
appreciated.
man. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Thank you, Fabio. Happy 5th. Brandy, we got some beer events coming up. I know that you've shouted out Urban Gardening Red Bear collab, but we got some other stuff on the docket as well.
there are some August events going on, and we are always uploading events and sharing things on social media. So follow DC Beer. But speaking of Urban Garden, I am excited to announce that our August Women's Brew Culture Club will be hosted by the one and only Imani and, of course, Lindsay. I love Lindsay. So it's going to be featuring their tea and herbal forward beers at their home base, City State, and some City State beers will be in the flights as well. Right now, I mean, I'm pretty sure it's on the books, but it's going to be on, hopefully, fingers crossed, Saturday the 19th. We'll send the rest of the information as well as the RSVP link in our August newsletter. That's going out at the first of the month. Make sure you head to dcbeer.com to sign up for our monthly newsletters and our monthly emails. And I'm serious when I mean once a month, maybe twice a month, like as a reminder. But that's it. Like we don't spam you every day like everybody else. So make sure you catch up on that. Don't miss that event. I mean, there's so many events going on.
One event I want to shout out, because it happens the day I get back from Delaware, is that there is a lambic event at the Sovereign on Saturday the 12th. It involves 14 lambics that also have grapes or grape products added. And so if you're with someone who might prefer wine, this is, I think, a really good chance to kind of move them over to the dark side. There are going to be some very vinous, very tannic beers, varying degrees of grape additives. I know at least one of these beers is going to be like 51% beer and 49% wine. And
Wow.
so,
Yo.
like, it's a really interesting way to go about trying things, expanding your horizons. Lambic and grapes, a match made in Belgian heaven, or Himmel, as they might say in some parts of Belgium.
That sounds fascinating, Jake. I've always maintained that that is the most wine-like beer because you can't make it without blending. And so much of beer, high quality beer around DC, it's one batch, it's brewed, it's fermented, it's put on draft or it's put in cans, and that's that. Comparatively to the 1, 2, and 3-year-old blend or the blending that's common in a lot of these fruit Belgian spontaneous beers like Krieken beer, Framboise, cherry beer or raspberry beer. This sounds like a great opportunity. So definitely look out for that on August 12th.
Speaking of great opportunity, Legends, the distributor, is going to unfortunately dissolve. And right now, Tilquin, one of the better goose houses and blenderies in Belgium, is a free agent. One of you better pick it up. And by you, I'm looking at you, Hop and Wine. You want to boost up your imports, or Craft Coalition. You want to get into that. I do not want to live in an area where there is no Tilquin. Fantastic, phenomenal, underrated, and also, unlike, say, Cantillon, almost always readily available, which is, I think, one of the things that's most important to me is that I can walk into a place like Craft Beer Cellar and buy it.
So, Jake, why did you mention Tilken by name and not Duchess du Bourgogne or
I
Saison du
like
Pont
Duchess.
That,
or
yeah,
insert other Belgian here?
yes, there are a couple, and you can look for a little bit more of this on the site in the next couple of weeks as we kind of flesh out what happens to Legends in their portfolio. Americans aren't buying imported beers the way that they used to, and you all should start hoarding. There should be a run, like at a
It's like
bank, like it's
chartreuse.
yes, like
I
chartreuse.
missed out on the chartreuse
Yeah,
run because
and
I'm
now
a
how much is
fucking
chartreuse,
moron.
right? No, exactly, Brandy. Like, when's the next
They're not
time
making
you and I
it.
are gonna get like a
I'm
last
hooked.
word cocktail? We're screwed. We're screwed, right? Don't don't get screwed.
And
Saison
yellow
Dupont.
chartreuse is not even as good as the
Yeah,
green.
yeah,
So
yeah.
stop,
The
y'all.
Look,
sky's
Stop.
not
look.
falling.
Real
It's
ones know,
just a
Brandy. We're
thunderstorm
talking
warning.
green. Green is where it's at, right? That's what's in the last word. That's what gives you that extra oomph and the kick. And so Saison Dupont is like that. You should start buying it all up because it's a perfect Thanksgiving beer. It's really a perfect beer, like right now, if you wanted
Yeah.
to. It's great, but yeah, there's gonna be more about this on the site. It's not just imports. Think of, say, Kyle and Sarah Schur. You used to know them over at Millstone Cider in Maryland. Now they run Graft Cider in New York State. Graft is caught up in this as well. We don't want to see a lull in those sorts of products that we love and take for granted. So it's going to be very, very interesting over the next couple of months how Legends Dissolution shakes out, both for imports and the beers we know and love. That was a long-winded rant on my part. Thank you all for listening.
It's a rant kind of night, Jake,
Yeah,
so it's
yeah, it is.
okay.
yeah.
I think we have feels because Richard's here. We get to see his lovely face, and I think we're just kind of going back and forth like the old times. So it's okay. It's okay to do
Yeah.
that.
Hopefully the listeners can keep up with this. Wild and
Sorry,
crazy
guys. Sorry,
bantering.
not sorry. We love y'all.
All right, at DCB or across the socials. As always, let us know. Hopefully, in 2 weeks, the socials will still be here with us. If not, dcbeer.com.
X.
You know where to find us.
True.
Yeah.